And I don't like to call them behavioral issues or inappropriate behavior because to me it all comes from a lack of communication in that they can't communicate their needs to us. And then we'll go over some effective ways to redirect when they get into those states of anxiety or aggression and those behavioral expressions that we can't manage. So, like I said, it all comes from communication. If we can't communicate and they can't understand, then there's just this situation where it's a tug of war for us and for them. The disease diminishes their ability to communicate with us. So they're telling us something, and we don't understand, and we're trying to give them an instruction, and they don't understand. So it's this constant tug of war in communication. Because with dementia, you see all kinds of changes they experience throughout the disease. You know, they can't find the right words. They have, aphasia. We had a lady at Charlie's place who had, aphasia, and she would say, I see the word, and she just couldn't get it out. Her words were all jumbled. She just couldn't get it out. Use the same words repeatedly is another characteristic of the failing communication. When I worked in the nursing home, I had a little man we called Nanu because he could only speak 2 words, and those 2 words were Nanu, Nanu. So this is going to be a challenge. How will I communicate with this man if he can only say 2 words? And so what I did was I'd walk in one morning and I'd say, hey Nanu, how you doing? And he'd say, Nanu, Nanu. How do you think he was feeling that day? Good. Pretty good. On another day, if I'd walk in and I'd say, hey Nanu, how you feeling today? He'd say, Nanu, Nanu. Well, how do you think he felt? Sad. Something was wrong. I needed to pay attention to that. So I went 2 years, a journey with him, just saying Nanu, Nanu. I gave him a job. Every morning he would put bird feed in the feeders across the campus of the nursing home, and he had a purpose. And I'd say, so, how are the birds today? You get a lot of them? Nanu, Nanu. You know, so I could tell we exchanged communication with tones of voice. And so, but that's all he could say, the 2 words repeatedly. They invent new words for objects is very common. One of our Charlie's Place clients was fixing coffee the other day, and she fixed her coffee and she put the sugar packet in it, and she looked around and she said, where's the water? Where's the water? What do you think she meant for her coffee? Cream. Right. So she substituted water for the word cream. You know, another lady had gone to the bathroom and I went to check on her, and she was washing her hands, and she was turning around as we left and she goes, wow, this is a really nice purse. And I said, yeah. So what do you think she meant? Place or bathroom. She couldn't come out with what the term was, so she said purse. They'll lose their train of thought. If you can imagine a world where no one understands you and you're trying to tell them something, you'll just lose your train of thought. You'll get so frustrated, and that's, I think, how they get, because they're trying to express something to us and we're not understanding, and they just lose their train of thought altogether and shut down. They cannot organize their words or thoughts. We have a little activity in a minute. I'll show you what it is like to experience that. They may revert to their native language. For instance, if they grew up in a Spanish-speaking household or French or Creole or whatever, they may revert back to that language as the disease progresses because it's more comfortable for them. And so as the disease progresses, they'll do that, and we won't be able to understand that unless we know that language. Some of them will speak less often. Again, if you're in a social situation and everyone's talking and they're asking you questions and you really don't understand them, then you tend to shut down. You just, well, I'm not going to speak because I don't understand what they're saying, and so they just speak. But that doesn't mean that they are not aware of what's going on or can't enjoy a quality life. All of these, just because of their deficits, doesn't mean they can't enjoy a quality of life. They'll start using gestures. Maybe if they're in distress and they're feeling ill, maybe they'll hold their head or their stomach, or they'll point to things, or they'll just constantly use their gestures because they can't get those words out of their mouth with the disease progression. You know, there's some misconceptions about behavioral expressions. We tend to blame that affective individual. We call him or her bad. They become the enemy. I'm reminded when I was teaching at elementary school, and one of my teacher's aides came in, it was the first day of school, and she goes, "Oh, there's Johnny." And I said, "What's wrong with Johnny?" "He's the bad kid." "He's the bad kid, you gotta watch out for him." And I said, "Oh, don't label him that. Maybe he makes some bad choices or has some bad days, but let's not label him a bad child." So we don't want to label them, a bad person. They don't understand what they're doing. And they're not doing it on purpose. I was told a story. Everyone know about this, what this is? What does it say, those of you that can read it from down here?
Pull down.
Pull down, right. Right, well there was this lady that was in the nursing home, and every day she'd go up to it and she'd read it, pull down. Fire alarm would go off, everybody would evacuate, they'd figure out the problem, and so the nursing staff said, "We've got to do something. She's a big behavior problem. She's a big behavior. She keeps doing this." And so they, couldn't figure out what to do, and so finally the staff says, "We're going to send her to a behavioral hospital because she's having these big behavior problems. She's pulling down the alarm." And so right before they sent it, another nurse on the floor said, "She's not a behavioral problem. She's not. She's a sweet lady. We've got to figure out why she, why she keeps pulling the fire alarm." So she went to the fire alarm and she read it, and it says, "Pull down." Well, she was trying to help. She was following instructions. But yet everyone on the staff labeled her as a behavioral problem. And they thought she was doing this on purpose, and she wasn't. She was feeling a need. She thought, "Wow, I'm going to help out. I'm going to pull this down." So hence, what did they do to remedy this pull down? They got a white label and put the words "don't" on the top of it. And she never touched it again because she followed instructions. And so that nurse saved her a trip to the behavioral hospital. And then just remember, they can't all be bad. They can't all be bad. But first, as I said, we need to talk about the language of dementia. And when we get in this mode of the language of dementia, it's all about building relationships. And I can't emphasize enough that the person that's affected by Alzheimer's or dementia, you need to know them inside and out. You need to build that relationship and build that trust. It's extremely important to know their background and their history. It will save you from a lot of intolerable moments. But, of course, we respect them as individuals. We see the person behind the disease. We don't elder speak to them, "Honey, darling." It's very condescending to them. Even though it's our southern charm for some of us, it's very condescending for an elderly adult to hear those terms. Again, we focus on the individual behind the disease. We let them function at their highest potential. We want to make their quality of life as best as we can. So, not interrupting what they enjoy doing or the conversation of choice. We want them to function at their highest level. Focus on their strength and really understand their differences. One of the clients at Charlie's Place who is from Colombia and speaks Spanish, additional 6 languages, it took us 3 visits to Charlie's Place for him to settle in, to transition. So he was one of my greatest challenges. And the first day he came in, he was very belligerent. He wanted his wife, wanted to go home, as they usually do. And so by about 10 o'clock, we finally said, "Yeah, he's too upset and nervous. Let's take him home. Bring him and have his wife pick him up." So tried him the next time, and he comes in, and he's a little belligerent and gets start rising with this behavioral expression. And so he gave me a $20 bill and told me to call a taxi. He was going home. And so I calmed him down, and this got to about 11, and then when he said he was going to throw a chair out the window, and he got really, really nervous, and we couldn't calm him down, we said, "Well, we better call the wife." So she came. The third day I said, "He's not going home today." I made up my mind. I was going to try my best to keep him there. Well, he's got a PhD in chemical engineering. And so I got my big periodic table out and put it on the table and thought that would, help him. And I would be the student, he would be the teacher. And he looked at it, "What do you want me to do with that?" And I said, "Well, show me the periodic table," and then closed the book and went on. So I went and got a pile of papers and envelopes, and he sat down and he said, "So what are you doing now?" And I said, "Well, I have this big mail out, and if you could help me, stuff these envelopes, it would really, really help me." And he sat down and he said, "Do you have a contract?" And I said, "Contract?" He says, "How much will I be paid for these services?" So I said, no, sir, I don't. He says, then I'm not doing the work. And I said, okay, so that's strike two. So he's still getting a little anxious, and I made up my mind he was going to stay after lunch if, just had it in me. He was my greatest challenge. And so I knew this man was very spiritual. He was Catholic upbringing, very strong in his faith. And so one of the times when he kept wanting to go home, I stopped him and just said, can you pray the Our Father with me in a very soft tone? Well, it was like a 180-degree turn. He sat down and I said, will you pray the Our Father with me? And he said, in which language? And I said, well, let's try English. And he said, okay. So we sat down, and I put my knees sat down eye level, because that's a sign of respect, don't look down at him. And so we, knee to knee, and I bent over, bowed my head, and I touched the top of his knees. Well, behavioral expression. He says, no one but my wife touches me like that. So I said, oh, I'm so sorry. I backed up, gave him his space. We said the Our Father, and he was calm the rest of the day. And now he's been there 6 years. He loves the place. But that, understanding individual differences in their culture. I knew at that point I had a lot to learn about his history, about his culture. But I respected the differences that we had. And it was a funny story, funny experience. So, again, about building relationships, we've got to connect with them. Look at them in the eye. Be very, very attentive. They are very, they have this sixth sense, and they can read you. So be very empathetic toward them. Go slow with your communication. Very short, simple sentences. Verbally, let's sound enthusiastic. If you heard that same story over and over and over again, then it's new to you each time you hear it. My father has vascular dementia, and I have heard more stories now of his service in the Korean War I've never heard. He never talked about it, but now he's talking more and more about it, and I get to journal it. But he says a lot that the stories are all the same sometimes, and I just nod my head and I say, gosh, Dad, that must have been so interesting or so great that you did that. So just really be attentive to them verbally. And physically, they want to be in relationship. So hold their hand, again, you don't watch their culture. So maybe their only wife can touch them. So pat their back, they want that intimacy. And emotionally, when they're screaming at you or they're talking to you, the tone, and use that empathy. Say, oh, I know you feel so sad, or I know you're mad. Come tell me about it. Be really empathetic with and validate what they're trying to express to you. And then listening. I want to go home, I want to go home, I want to go home. Well, tell me about your home. Tell me where you lived. Build that relationship, build that trust. We always want them to express themselves too. It takes a long time for them to get out any words or a sentence most of the time, but we need to let them express themselves. We can start up a conversation about something they know or something they can touch. It's beautiful days outside right now. We could take them outside and show them a flower pot and let them touch it or smell it. Anything sensory can start up a conversation and make them feel ease, and it makes them feel part of this community, part of the socialization that they need so much. And then, allow them plenty of time to process what you're trying to tell them. Generally, it takes about 16 seconds for a person with dementia to process, and that's a long time, but you have to be patient. My 5-year-old grandson says, yeah, patience is hard. Yeah, it is hard. So 16 seconds, you kind of gauge it that they're going to have to process, and then ask them to repeat it or, rephrase what they're saying. And write back, did you say you were hungry? No, let them process it. Ignore mistakes in word choices. The lady that says it's a nice purse, I knew what she was talking about. I just ignored it. I didn't challenge her with it, saying, no, this is a bathroom. Watch for, gestures. Go along with a conversation of choice. If it's raining outside and they say, gosh, the snow is lovely, well, then we're going to talk about snow. We're not going to say, we're in South Louisiana in almost April and it's not snowing. We're going to say, gosh, it is a beautiful snow. Tell me about it. Tell me about when did you grow up where it snowed? And then try to not interrupt the person as they're trying to express themselves. We like to play verbal Scrabble when someone starts talking and we interrupt them and finish their sentence. And so kind of hold off on that verbal Scrabble and don't interrupt, let them get their thoughts out. The more they can dialogue with us, the better. We want that conversation, we want that dialogue. And we don't want them to shut down and be isolated. So, go along with that conversation of choice and let them express themselves without interrupting. So, when we redirect someone that's having this behavioral expression, as I said, you have to know the person inside and out. Know what they like, what they don't like, remain calm and assuring. Notice that the inappropriate behavior or behavior expression is a part of the disease process. Don't take it personally. We don't want to criticize or scold. They can't reason. They can't reason or resolve the situation. One of my ladies wouldn't get out of the car one morning, and we got very frustrated because she needed to get into Charlie's place. Her daughter needed to get to work. And I said, they came and got me and said, 3 of us have tried. We can't get her out of the car because she said she left her baby at home. Well, she's in her 80s. We know she doesn't have a baby at home. So I go to her and I said, well, why don't you come on in? We're going to have a fun day at Charlie's place. And she says, I can't. I left my baby at home and I got to get back to her. I know she's crying and she's hungry. I need to get home. And I said, oh, but the nanny came and she's there taking care of the baby. She said, go ahead and have a good day at Charlie's place. No, I know the nanny didn't come. I'm the only one that can take care of this baby. You close the door. I want to go home. I need to get to my baby. So no amount of redirection or me talking to her was working. So I knew she was an evangelist. She was a very church-going lady. She sang in the choir. So I just quietly started singing Amazing Grace. Amazing Grace. And I just started singing it. Well, she started listening. She looked up from the car, and one foot came out, and the other foot came out, and I held her hand, and we walked into Charlie's place singing Amazing Grace, and we got to the kitchen, and we sat down, and she just got so tickled. She just was laughing all over herself. And I said, wow, I got her in. Good, took a breath. And I said, so why are you laughing? What's funny? And she says, honey, if you had to sing for your supper, you'd starve. So I just laughed with her, and I said, well, you've got a much prettier voice than I do, and I appreciate it, and we had a great day afterwards. But I didn't take it personally. I didn't scold her saying, you shouldn't say things like that, it hurts my feelings, I laughed with her, and that's what you have to do in the language of dementia. You have to find the root, and that goes back, most of behavioral expressions are because they can't communicate a need to us. So we need to find the root of what they're trying to say to us. Like, we need to, what are they trying to say? Explore that. Explore the time and place that they are, what's going on, and so what are they trying to say to us? Are they reacting to something? Did something happen that day that makes them uncomfortable? Did something happen in their life that's a void now? Is there another caregiver? Are they in distress? Are they feeling some kind of pain? We need to pay attention to that. Do they have a new medication that's reacted negatively with them? Look for some kind of meaning behind this behavior. And then, research the behavior. Once you have the behavioral expression, what worked or what didn't, or what did you do to solve the issue? What helped? And helped in interpreting the meaning of what the person was trying to tell us. Most often the behavior is situational. How many of you have children or grandchildren? Okay, lots of you have grandchildren. How many of you, your children, when you leave the grandchildren with you and they come back and you say, God, they were angels, and the parents say, well, they don't act like that at our house. Well, children have a great way of adapting to environments, and this is a situational behavior because maybe they're in a daycare and it's noisy and lots of kids, but they find time they can take a nap at the structured time. But at home, mom keeps it real quiet, nobody can talk during the nap time, and so that child gets up and wonders why, because they've made out this or assumed this behavior strategy at the daycare where they can sleep during those noisy times, but when they get home and it's quiet, then they have to adjust. And so that's similar with someone with dementia. Most of the behavior is situational. They're having to adjust to the environment, the stimuli, everything around them, maybe a new person. So it could be situational. And then watch your tone and your body language. Are you in their space? You know, are you facing them? And because they find that a pretty aggressive mood. So we want to talk maybe 3/4 or to the side of them. Watch your expressions. They mirror our expressions. So if you're tense or backing up when they're talking with you, then they'll know something's wrong, and their behaviors can rise. And again, your facial expressions are so important. You want to smile and nod and be really reassuring. So I want y'all to read this for me. Ollie,
I didn't tell her you were stupid.
okay. We really have to watch the way we express in our language of dementia, our tone of voice. And so we don't want to be whiny or raspy or breathy or squeaky or piercing. You know, we have to do a tone that they can understand. Most individuals with dementia, when our tone raises at the end of the sentence, they think we're asking them a question. And that can cause a great deal of anxiety because, oh, I hear this tone, it means a question, and I can't answer it, and I get real anxious. So, you know, your tone of voice is very, very important. So we'll try a little exercise here. We're going to read this, but we're going to enunciate different letters of this sentence. So read it again, all of it.
I didn't tell her you were stupid.
Okay, now I want you to read it and enunciate the I. I
didn't tell her you were stupid.
What is the meaning of that sentence now?
Somebody else.
Okay. Now I want you to enunciate didn't. I didn't.
Tell her you were stupid.
Okay, what does that mean now?
You didn't do it. You didn't say that.
I did not. Okay, now we say tell. I didn't tell her.
You were stupid.
What does that mean?
You implied it.
I didn't tell her you were stupid. I, implied it. Okay, now her. I didn't tell her you were stupid. Told somebody else. Right? Okay, now you. I didn't tell her you were stupid. Somebody else is stupid. I told her Susie was stupid or whatever. Okay, were. I didn't tell her you were stupid. What does that mean? You are stupid. You're still stupid, right? Okay, then. I didn't tell her you were stupid. Yeah, I told her you were crazy or something. So you can see 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 7 words put together in a sentence. You said it 7 different times, and it meant 7 different things. So just the point across, your tone is very important in how you say it. Now, if you would have lifted stupid at the end, again, they think you're asking them a question. And so, again, just watch your tone of voice. So you also have to pick up cues from their conversation. And this, I mean, pick out the words that they are telling you. So we're going to do a little exercise. How many of y'all didn't get a handout? I see some of you taking notes. I just wanted y'all to have some paper. Okay, so on this piece of paper or anywhere on it, I want you to write down an article of clothing. Write down an article of clothing. Any article of clothing. Yeah, you can write it anywhere on the paper. An article of clothing. Now write down something found in a restaurant. Something found in a restaurant. Now write down a verb that describes something you like doing. Maybe it's gardening, cooking, bicycling. A verb that describes something you like doing. Next, name an animal. And the last one, name an action verb. An action, any kind of action verb. Okay, with those 5 words you have, only 5 words you have, I want you to make a sentence, please. Are y'all frustrated? Y'all want to read me some of your sentences? Anybody offer what your sentences read? Okay.
Napkin, run, cat, shirt, walking.
Napkin, run,
Cat, shirt, walking.
walking. Okay. And can you put that in a sentence in an intelligible manner that I can understand it? Napkin, run, cat, shirt, walking. Even if you say walking, shirt, cat, run, napkin, backwards. Does it make much sense? No? You have one thing?
Yeah. My words were sweater, napkin, sleeping, hedgehog, and throat. So I was wearing my sweater, I threw the napkin at the sleeping hedgehog.
That's a great sentence, but you can only use those 5 words.
Yeah.
No, you can only use the 5 words to make a sentence.
Oh,
But good job.
I was.
That's okay. Only use the 5 words to make a sentence that you picked out. You had some good words? Some good sentences? What were yours? No, whatever, yeah? Yeah.
Oh, I have swimming, glass dog, run, pants.
Swimming, glass dog, run, pants. These are what we call word salads. They're a series of, they don't make sense, so we call them a word salad. They're mixed all together. But if you pick something out in a state of aggression or anxiety, and if they're saying these intelligible words or phrases, then maybe we can pick something out and pull it out, and that'd be a cue for a conversation to redirect them. Napkin, run, cat, shirt, walking. I might pull out, cat, you have a cat? What's his name? What's his name? Tell me about your cat. Or maybe in one of these anxiety states, they're trying to tell us something with those 5 words, or 3 words, or 2 words. So we got to pull that out. So let that kind of be a cue when their anxiety rises and they start saying these words that don't understand. They're all jumbled up and trying to make a sentence, but maybe 1 or 2 of those are really the emphasis you need to go with, and they're trying to express something to you. Shirt, walking, maybe they're cold, maybe they need a shirt or a sweater. So you just got to be a detective and decipher that language and go on with it. I liked your sentences. So, some of the potential root causes of behaviors, and it all goes back to communication. A reaction to a loss. When the caregiver possibly passes on before the loved one does, they notice that loss or void in their life. And so hence they get very anxious and they get very depressed. But there again, communication, they can't express that to us. They can't express how they're feeling. Their inability to meet their basic needs. They want to do something, they can't tell us. Maybe they need to put on a sweater or pick out a different outfit. Maybe they need to go to the bathroom, they can't tell us that. Maybe there's a medical issue. I'm sure y'all talked about it in this class. When we first have behavioral expressions that are out of the ordinary at Charlie's Place, we tell the family check for a urinary tract infection. Because this medical issue can really, really play havoc on people with dementia, and they really change their personality more so than often. And so we check, have them check for a UTI. Environmental factors, living arrangements. We had a caregiver who kept her mother, but she had 3 other sisters, and so the mother would spend 1 week with one sister, go to the next week and spend another week. Well, that woman got moved 4 times in a month, an average. So she had to continually adapt to a different environment every month. And she was really expressing that in her behavior. And so we had to sit the caregivers down and said, I know it's how y'all can manage, caring for your mom, but this moving her and transitioning her to this new environment once, 4 times a month is really an issue here. So we had to, look at ways we could change that. Sensory impairment, we can't know if they can't hear or they can't see. Perhaps they're not eating because we put food on a white paper plate or Chinette plate. White is glaring. It doesn't have a contrast. So, we need to look at those sensory impairments, especially with their dining. If they're not eating, change the plates to the color red or blue. Researchers said red is the best because it not only gives a contrast, but it also increases their appetite. So we use contrasting plates at Charlie's Place. Sundowning, I'll talk in a minute. It's that time of evening where the busyness of the day settles down, and so they get more anxious because they're trying to meet obligations like you and I at the end of the day. Again, a change in caregiver. Maybe they have a different sitter every day or every other day. They get used to one. That's why we really promote consistent assignments in nursing homes, because the dementia patient really gets to know that person and trust that person. It's very important to them in that environment. And then travel, the change environments again, very confusing for them, very disorienting for them. It's very difficult to travel with someone with Alzheimer's or dementia, again, because of the change in environments. They need structured routines, and taking them on a long trip especially, will tire them and really change their behaviors. Hospitalization and surgery. I've seen more cases than none of someone going into the hospital and having surgery with the anesthesia, and that really changes them. It seems to, the disease seems to progress more rapidly after that. And then, a lot of dementia patients they're 4 times more likely to go in the hospital, and they stay an average of 4 days. So you can imagine that experience in the hospital with personnel are not used to them. I followed one of my nursing home residents to the hospital one day, and they brought her tray at night and put it on the cart, and the cart was way over to the bed, and they left. And I looked around, and had I not been there, she never would have eaten. I know they've gotten better by now, but you just don't know the transition that they experience in hospitals, and so how that plays on their behavior. The presence of house guests, how many Thanksgiving and holidays or Christmas holidays and all these guests coming in and out that can really overstimulate them, and they get really, really anxious. I've seen it with my father. I'm the 4th of 9 kids, and when everybody comes home for Thanksgiving, he goes into another room and just has to have some silence, which is good because there's a lot of grandkids, and it's too much for his world. His world is already pretty confusing and jumbled, and so he doesn't need that extra noise and all the children around him because it really causes him some unrest. And bathing, how many of us want someone else to bathe us? It's a very vulnerable state. And so, of course, we're going to have some behaviors there that are unpleasant because they don't want someone to bathe them, they want to do it themselves, they want to keep independent. So that could be a root cause of the behavioral expression. Bathing is a very difficult process for someone with dementia, but if we walk them through it, if we turn their environment into a pleasing environment, play music, maybe put some sensory like smells around, candles or whatever, have a warm towel waiting for them, and use your hands as a pathway. Let them, hold their hand and let them bathe themselves as much as they can. Will really help with their anxiety with bathing. Being asked to change clothing. Some of them want to change clothes all day long, different outfits, and some of them don't want to change at all. That goes back to hygiene. Dementia patients are the world's worst on good hygiene. They don't want to take baths or do anything like that. So being asked to change clothing is monumental. So we need to redirect them, and it's wash day. Let me put on your favorite shirt. Let me wash it or whatever. And then of course lack of sleep. It's very difficult if they're up pacing all night. They're not going to enjoy a good night's sleep or a restful sleep. And so we need to make sure that they get that sleep by doing activities in the evening that may be like walking or dancing with some music that might tire them and have them have a restful sleep. These are the top 10 unmet needs by Tipa Snow. She was one of my speakers last year. They're unmet physical needs and emotional needs. So look at the physical needs. Are they hungry or are they thirsty? Are they tired? Again, are they over-energized? Did we, keep them out all day and they're just too over-energized? Do they need to go to the bathroom, or have they soiled their clothes? We look at that as a physical need. Temperature, our elderly population is always cold, so they always need two layers at the most, probably 2-3 layers of clothes to keep warm. Look to see if they're in pain. If they're in distress, usually a really, really aggressive behavior, there's some signs of physical distress. So we really need to look at that. Or, is it in their mouth or their joints, or is it coming from their guts? Look at their physical pain. Emotional needs. If you can imagine a world where no one's understanding you, yes, you're going to have some emotional needs and outcries. You're going to be angry. You're going to be sad. You're going to be lonely. You're going to be scared, very scared. You don't know what this disease is going to do, to you. And then bored. They're just plain bored. If you can imagine the circle of, I call it a circle of mobility. And if you draw a little circle, and you can do it on your paper if you want. If you draw a little circle, and that's me, that's you in that circle. You draw another circle, and that's your family, your husband, wife, brother, sister, whatever. That's your family. And then, another circle is your extended family. Another circle is clubs you're involved in, events that you coordinate. Another circle is civic organizations or anything you're involved in. So you have all these circles of mobility in your life, and you're very active. But if you can imagine someone with dementia, their circles are continually fading away until it's just me, and they become very isolated. And that's what we want to not do. We don't want them isolated. We want to keep them continually engaged. So when they get bored, they get into trouble. You know that with kids in the summer. You can't wait till school starts back because day after school they're already bored. So they need things to do and keep them active. So agitation, aggression, anxiety, what do we do? How do we redirect? Well, we want to first look at, is there a physical problem? Because are they in physical distress? And tend to that problem if they are. But always keep structured routines. They enjoy the structure. They need a purpose every morning to get up, and they need something to do. So it's a structured routine. My father, every morning, all his life, he's had 2 fried eggs, a meat, and 2 pieces of toast for his breakfast and a cup of coffee. Every day of his life. He was 85 years old. Now, when my mother broke her hip, and he stayed with me a couple of years ago, and he stayed with me for about 10 days, and I'm working, I'm trying to get to the rehab with my mom, and I'm keeping my dad and arranging that. But he needed his 2 fried eggs, his 2 pieces of toast, and his meat. And so I would get up early and fix it for him. Yes, he's very spoiled, I know you're saying that. But that was his structure, that was his routine. And so I tried to keep as much routine because he was worried about my mom. And so it really helped with his anxiety to keep that structure. It was very important for him. Reduce caffeine intakes. Although over the weekend I read where drinking a cup of coffee during the day can help you right before you take a nap. So I didn't understand that research, but today coffee is good and another day coffee is bad. But really in dementia patients you want to reduce that caffeine intake because it can tend to over-energize them. Restrict their choices. If you're constantly asking them, what do you want for supper or what do you want to wear today? They don't know. They can't distinguish that. I had a caregiver who called me and said, my wife is changing clothes all day long. She's driving me crazy. There's a pile of clothes on the bed. I went to his house and, in the closet were all her clothes lined up. And I said, let's go get 3 pegs, nail them to the wall, and pick 3 of her favorite outfits. Disregard all the rest of the things in her closet. Let her do that all day long. It was just 3 outfits. And it won't overwhelm you. It will keep you happy. And so it just maintained a little calm in the household. She had too many choices there. We always want to distract with some kind of activity that they enjoy. And that goes back to knowing that person and what they really enjoy. However, and that being said, some individuals with dementia, if they cannot be as good as they were with said activity, it might intimidate them. I had a very famous local artist at the nursing home, and I was so excited to have her in my unit, and I put out all the canvases and the paints and the paintbrush, and I knew we were going to have a lovely painting activity. Well, it failed because she didn't want to pick up the brush. She looked at the blank canvas. She didn't know what to do with it. She just got up and walked away. And so I speculate she couldn't paint as she did before. It frustrated her. The canvas was very intimidating. So we had to go on and find another activity that was just as enjoyable for her. Choose your words carefully when someone is in that aggressive state. I'm sorry you're feeling this way. Use a very empathetic tone with them. It'll really redirect them. Look at the environment. Is it stormy outside? Is there a glare in the room that's causing some figures on the wall? Keep it very environment friendly. And then examine human interactions. Is there a person in that affected individual's life that has always made him or her tense? They've always not gotten along? Well, then they wouldn't want to be around that person. And so watch those human interactions and, avoid that person if he was really a thorn in his side before he had dementia. Again, give enough time for them to express themselves and always check their medications, because if they have a change in medication, it could be a negative side effect of that medication. Paranoia and hallucinations. I think Dr. Keller said y'all went over a lot of different forms of dementia. You'll see in Lewy body dementia a lot of these characteristics of paranoia and hallucinations. Respond to the feeling behind the accusation. Why did you do that to my mother? They're telling you, oh, you must miss your mother a lot. Turn it around. Don't challenge them and say, I didn't do anything to your mother. What are you talking about? Again, go with the conversation. I had a lady, again at the nursing home, who loved bling bling. When she was admitted, her family went and got cubic zirconia in all her rings and her necklaces so she could still have her bling bling. And so she wore just abundant amounts of jewelry every day. And so I would come in, and if I had a necklace on, she would point to me and said, I didn't tell you you could have that. I didn't tell you you could borrow that. And I said, oh, I'm so sorry. You need to take that off right now and give it back to me. And so in her mind, I had stolen it from her room or whatever, and I was wearing it. So I would take it off, and I'd go back to her room, and she'd watch me and then later recycle it. So it got to be so often that I thought I was really going to lose some of my jewelry. I got Mardi Gras jewelry, the nice beads, and I would wear that every morning. And she would come in with her accusations that I'd stolen her jewelry, and I would just pull it off my head. I said, I'm just real sorry. I thought you understood. I was just borrowing it for today. And so that would do the trick, Sometimes it helps with some nonverbal communication. pat their hands, hold their hands, give them a, hand lotion massage, something nonverbal that can really ease their anxiety. Avoid TV watching. We had a caregiver that said, my husband's not sleeping, what do I do, what do I do? And I said, what is he doing during the day? And she said, he's watching marathons of Law and Order. And I said, that could be the problem. Let's watch the Food Network or Animal Planet or something that's less distracting. We always want to, validate these behaviors too. Show them the respect. If there's a shadow in the room and they're seeing maybe a little girl with a knife in their hand and they're scared to death, and we want to validate it. Say, oh, I'm scared too, let's leave the room. Validate their feelings. It acknowledges them that they're still that person and you believe in them. So, acknowledge them and validate that. If it gets too bad, always consult your physician. Why are these paranoid behaviors becoming too consistent? Is there something else, going wrong? Again, it might be medication or whatever. Repetitive speech, repetitive outcries. I said earlier, I want to go home, I want to go home. We hear that all the time. But essentially, what is home to you? Tell me what home is to you. One word, what is home?
Where you come to the place where my family
Place where your family is?
is.
Familiar.
Security.
Quiet, security. Yeah. They might not be looking for just the four walls. They might be looking for that security, that place of familiarity, that place of love, just that place where they feel secure and they don't, it's not in this environment that they're unsure of. So when they want to go home, they want to go home. Pay attention to that and pick out that, tell me about your home. Where'd you grow up? Again, go with the conversation of choice. And, when they're yelling out, some of them just want attention. Maybe that person, you the caregiver or the staff person or the sitter, is the only person that they ever get attention from. And so they're yelling out just to get attention. They want that relationship. Again, they want that intimacy. They want that knowing of connectedness to people. They're yelling out a name, Mary, Mary, Mary. Well, then obviously they're thinking about a person named Mary or someone in their life. And so we'll ask them, tell me about Mary. Tell me, sit down and tell me about Mary. Most of the time, though, if we just sit down with them and offer them a little conversation, it'll quiet them down. Yelling, again, they're frightened of their environment, they need companionship, maybe they need to go to the bathroom, just check those cues. And babbling, I see a lot of this, they'll be in a chair and and some, staff think that's alarming and they want to quiet that person down and get them at ease. Well, maybe if they're in distress, with some kind of physical problem, but for the most part, it's a self-massage. We all have mannerisms that make us feel a little more comfortable. Maybe we twirl our hair, or maybe we, rub our hands when we're nervous. Well, if you're in an environment where you're unsure of or you're fearful, you're going to have a mechanism to cope. And this is their mechanism to cope. And so babbling is just a mechanism that they're coping for the fear of their environment, the fear of where they are. And so we just let them do it because it eases their anxiety. Wandering goes along with sundowning. 6 in 10 people with Alzheimer's dementia will wander. It's very dangerous but life-threatening. We see these behaviors again at sundowning when the busyness of the day slows down and the sun setting. It's mainly, I like to use the word searching because they're searching for something. They're searching for familiarity, the home. What do y'all do in the evening at 5 o'clock? You come to class, but on other days, you're starting supper, you're maybe reading the nightly news, maybe you're just coming home from work, or some of you are retired, maybe you have a routine at 5 o'clock, maybe you're going to exercise or something. Well, this person with dementia has a routine too, and so if that biological clock kicks in, they're going to wander. They're going to search to find that obligation that they need to meet. My husband's cousin a couple of years ago has dementia, and he left and went. He still was driving, and he left. Told his wife he was going to the auto parts store to get an auto part. And an hour later, he didn't get back. And 2 hours later, didn't get back. And she called me and she said, Dana, he's not home. And I said, call the police. Let's get something going here. And so, of course, we called the police. They gave a description, worried to death. 10 hours later, he was found in Youngsville, Alabama. And stopped at a gas station. He was hungry. 2 ladies, knew he was in distress and thankfully called the family. And so the family took the 10-hour drive to go get him and bring him home. And so his wife just new in the world of dementia and Alzheimer's. So I don't know why he did that. I'm so mad at him. I told him he could never use the car again. And so I sat there with her, and I know she was distressed over the experience. And I said, what did he do? What did he left the house around 8 o'clock to go to the auto parts. I said, what did he used to do before he retired? Because I didn't know the man personally. And she said, oh, he was a Nabisco salesperson. He had the whole Gulf Coast area. That's what he was doing. He was going on his territory. He was selling. And so, we have to look at that. Where are they going? Especially if they elope and we don't we can't find them or where to look. Look for favorite places or areas that they like to go to or you think they would want to go to. If they're right-handed, they'll usually go in the direction of their right, in the direction of their right hand. If they're left, they'll go in the direction of the left. So that's just a little tidbit. If they wander, always look in those directions with their dominant hand. Sundown, as I said, again, the nightly news is on, dinner is served, their biological clock changes. But I've had caregivers that say they have loved ones that experience sundowning in the mornings, which is kind of unusual, but it can happen. It's just a trigger in their biological clock. Maybe that person is sundowning in the morning because they work the night shift. Who knows, or whatever. So they may wander all night. So some of these remedies for sundowning, we need to keep them active. If I know that the individual I'm caring for is going to have sundowning and wandering tendencies at 5 or 6 in the evening, I'm going to have me a sheet of paper and I'm going to have some kind of routine that we're going to do at that time of day. We're going to put on some music and dance, or we're going to go outside for a walk, or we're going to visit relatives, or we're going to go have some pet therapy, or we're going to go for a drive to get ice cream. Anything that can redirect that period of time and make them calm, and then we can come back and get them ready. Lots of caregivers I know, when at 5 o'clock and their loved one says, I want to go home, it's time to go home, they'll put them in the car, drive around the block, and come back, and they're perfectly fine, because they think they've made that transition back home. So there's a lot of don'ts. When we're when we're in a behavioral expression, we don't want to raise our voice. We want to keep that tone, a very empathetic tone, a concerned tone. We don't want to confront or criticize. We don't want to discuss the angry behavior with them because they cannot resolve the situation. Don't initiate, above all, physical contact. That only makes it worse. And don't ignore or shame the person or ridicule the person. Some of you in my OLLI class heard this story already. I'll tell it again. But I was in the nursing home. We took field trips, and so my nursing manager would always say, "I don't suppose you want to go on a field trip because your people have dementia and Alzheimer's, and it's kind of difficult with the challenges." And I said, "Oh, on the contrary, we're going to go. They deserve to go. They have a quality of life. I see the person behind the disease." And so we would go around Baton Rouge, get ice cream, go listen to the LSU band play, and had lovely times. Well, she came to me one day and said, they're planning a day trip to Natchez, Mississippi, to the riverboat to go eat, the buffet, and some of them are going to do the little machines. And she says, but I don't think you need to go. And I said, yeah, I think I need to go. And so I took 5 of my high-functioning residents, and we got on the bus, and we got to the riverboat in Natchez, Mississippi, had a lovely day, lovely lunch. It was a beautiful day like today. And I had a little man, I call him Mr. Smith, and we got on the 2nd floor, we were leaving, and we got in the elevator. And when we got in the elevator, the doors closed, and they had mirrors. And people with dementia or Alzheimer's are very fearful of mirrors because they don't see that person in the mirror. They're in a time and place that we don't know. So they see someone else. They might see a stalker. They see someone they don't know and they're not familiar with them. So he got very scared. And when we got to the 1st floor, it was like his feet were in cement. And the doors opened and I said, come on, Mr. Smith, it's time to go. No response. No response. People were trying to get in the elevator. I motioned to him, please give me a few minutes. I said, come on, Mr. Smith, it's time to go. It's time to, we're going to go on the bus and go home. Nothing. No verbal communication, nothing, no expression. A big old security guard comes and he says, ma'am, you got to get out of this elevator. People want to get upstairs. And I said, yes, sir, just give me a few more minutes. So I turned to him and I said, you know, Mr. Smith, Judy's fixing supper. Judy was his only child. I said, Judy's fixing supper and she's having meatloaf and mashed potatoes, your favorite, and you're going to be late. We're going to be late because you're in here and you won't get on the bus. And he looks at me, he goes, Judy's fixing supper for us? And I said, yeah. He said, well, let's go. Got out of the elevator, onto the van. By the time we were out of the parking lot, he was fast asleep. And so, I used that mechanism. I, reached back into something he enjoyed, something he loved, to pull him out of that. But I didn't confront him. I didn't criticize him. I didn't use physical contact with him. That would have just erupted in a whole another story. But it calmed him down, it worked the trick, and it got him out of the elevator. So we have to be very creative, and we have to pull out those tidbits of their history to pull them back into what you need them to do. So I'm going to give you a little exercise and see, knowing that you know the language of dementia and the tips and strategies in trying to redirect someone or trying to communicate with them. And how would we get this man who is having anxiety, we tell this man, we're going to take you home. He says, I'm afraid to go home because the man in the mask is there. So what kind of questions would you ask? How would you start? Ask me some questions maybe that would resolve why he's fearful the man in the mask is there. Why do you think he's, yes?
Where did you see him?
Where did you see him? Good, yeah. Where did you see him? He's afraid to go home. The man in the mask is at home.
What kind of mask?
What kind of mask? Well, maybe he doesn't understand that question. What kind of mask? He can't tell.
Cover his eyes or his whole face.
Cover his eyes or his whole face? Mm-hmm.
What did the man in the mask do? What has he done?
What did the man in the mask do? What has he done? He's got a mask on, and he uses gestures.
Have you ever talked to him?
Have you ever talked to him? He just yells. Yes.
Have you ever seen this man before?
Have you ever seen this man? Yes. He's at my home. Is he in the bathroom? No. He's at home.
Is he bigger than you?
Is he bigger? Sometimes. Sometimes he's bigger than me. Any more questions? Gotta keep asking.
Did he say anything to you?
Has he said it? Has the man in the mask said anything to you? No, he's just home. I'm afraid to go home.
Does he ever go away?
Does he ever go away? Sometimes.
Do you want me to call Ghostbusters?
Do you want me to call Ghostbusters? Now that would make me laugh. So it might redirect me. So actually this man was a baseball player. Didn't want to go home because the man in the mask was going to yell out. So he's, so I didn't give you. What do you need? Mr. Andrews cannot communicate that need and continues to tap on the counter. The nurse redirects him to the dining room to eat. Mr. Andrews gets back up and goes to the nurse's station and does the same thing, taps on the nurse's station counter. The nurse repeats the redirection and Mr. Andrews sits for a while and eats, then paces afterwards. The next evening, Mr. Andrews, about the same time, approaches the nurse's station and begins tapping again. How would you resolve this behavior? Very irritating for the personnel, all this tap, 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 tap.
Give him a drum.
Give him a drum. Hey, that's a good idea. Give him a drum, something, redirect him with that. What in his history could have been going on maybe at dinner time that he's having a void? Maybe computer, maybe he did computer work. Typing, maybe. Music, maybe he was a music instructor or conductor, maybe. Good resolve. He was actually a salesman, and the nurses couldn't figure it out. They were so frustrated, and during the care planning, they started talking to the wife and said, why does he do that? Did he do it at home? And she said, no, he never did tap right before he ate dinner. And she said, well, what were his habits? Well, you know, sometimes he would go out of town, and sometimes he would work, come home. And she says, you know, but every day at 5 o'clock, no matter where he was, he would call me and say, honey, I love you. He wanted the phone. So the next night, the nurses dialed the wife's number, gave the phone to him, and he'd say, honey, I love you. And he was fine after that. So, you know, these things seem simple, but they're not. It takes a lot of work and patience, again. It takes a lot of research and trying to figure out where they're coming from or where the behavior is coming from. And it's lack of communication. He couldn't tell the nurse to give me the phone, I want to call my wife. He just tapped. So, you know, we want to respond to the need, not the behavior. Again, you know, those communication techniques. If our behavior is reactive, their behavior is going to be reactive. So it's this vicious circle. And if your behavior is not gentle or patient or calm, then you're part of the problem. I hate to say it. And as caregivers, we all get upset, but sometimes we just need to remove ourselves from the situation if we're going to get that alarmed and that anxious with the person we're caring for, and then count to 10 and come back. But, you know, it's a vicious cycle if we constantly be reactive to the behavior. Again, patience and perseverance is what it takes to care for someone with dementia. Allow them to express their thoughts, don't interrupt, you know, don't criticize. We're so, human nature is, don't you remember when? You know, don't you remember we went on vacation this time, and don't you remember what you had for lunch? Well, no, they can't. So again, that negative word is don't, you know. Don't you remember your sister visited you yesterday? Well, no, they don't remember that. So it just makes them more anxious. So we want to rephrase and turn it into a positive, you know. Oh, I heard from Susie, your sister. Yeah, how's she doing? You know, start the conversation like that. Again, give simple explanations, no more than 3 or 4 words. They can't process that many words at a time. And so, and just really honor their world. Their conversation of choice, go with that. And then, you know, I told you I would talk about person-centered care. How many have heard that term, person-centered care or culture change? It's called person-centered care. It's a whole culture change about really what should have been all along. It's about the individual's choice of care and allowing that individual to have the structured routine that they had before they entered into any kind of environment. You know, look to each conversation or each behavioral expression as a means of communication, as a means of dialogue. You know, nursing homes and assisted living facilities are going to like household models now. That's a culture change because they feel more comfortable in a house, you know, home-like environment like Charlie's place is. So it's a matter of resident choice and what they enjoy doing. And then the recognition that all their actions have some kind of meaning. Whatever they're doing has some kind of meaning behind it. So what are our goals? You know, we want the affected individual to be successful. You know, and wherever your definition of success, you know, success could be he smiled at me today, or success could be he made a full sentence today, or success could be he helped me cook today. So those are the successes we need to help that affected individual with. We want to use the abilities that still remain with them. Make sure that they have something to do and a purpose, something that's important that they can relate to. You know, like I said with the artist, she didn't want to paint anymore, but she liked to cook, and so I would help her, you know, ask her to help me bake cookies or something that they can relate to. And it's something that they personally enjoy, a hobby, or even if it's looking at photographs or clipping coupons, something that they enjoy doing. Really to enhance and enrich their quality of life and keep them engaged. And there's not any more important that I can say is to keep them engaged at all times and let them enjoy a quality of life at all times. So studies have shown that behavior management are about as equally effective as medications. I know sometimes that the physician has to prescribe medication for these outbursts, and it might be effective, but they have a lot of side effects. And so we want to try to spin it around and try our behavior management techniques and effective communication and look to the individual beyond the disease, behind the disease, so to speak. So I think it's time for questions.